Nice one. So here we are. Welcome to the podcast. Alex Trimnell, the Managing Director of Muc Off. Is that correct?
It is perfect. Good to be here.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. I'm usually saying thank you very much for coming on, but we're here in Poole in Dorset, in your office.
Yep.
Your man cave. Actually, I'd probably best describe it after seeing some of the toys you have around here. But yeah, welcome to the podcast. Thank you very much.
No, it's great to be, and this is my little cave where I hide away and create and collect my thoughts. So.
Yeah, cool. It's some setup, and it's really interesting to see. I think the best way to kick things off is to probably introduce yourself to the listeners as well as the Muc Off company and brand. For those people who aren't familiar with, say, the cycling industry or the brand, how would you describe Muc Off to those people?
I think we've changed so much from when we began. It was all about bike maintenance and really cleaning at the beginning. But as the brand's grown into a kind of a lifestyle brand, it really is something that we feel, we ultimately want to be there for the rider. So, anything that can support the rider and what they're doing. And as the brand grows and becomes more well-known, that's going into kind of apparel and different things. So really, we're kind of there to support and be there right next to you, kind of making riding as enjoyable as possible.
That's cool. I think it'd be great to hear this sort of history of the brand and how it all started, because I know from working with you guys a little bit about that, and I think the listeners will be really interested to see how it all kind of came about. But I think, like, more sort of topically, 2020 has obviously been an insane year for everyone. Small, medium-sized businesses are no exception to that. What sort of, how would you kind of sum up? I don't even know where to begin with. Like, how would you kind of sum up the year? It must have been a fair sort of, quite a stressful one for someone in your position with a sort of a relatively big business, a lot of people relying on you. How was that sort of first part of 2020 for you?
It was just, just insane. It was, we were forecasting a big growth year. We'd come off the back of, 2019 was a good year. So we were really looking to, carry on really aggressively investing in our team, in our people, and in innovation, right across the business, sponsorship and marketing. So we were kind of sat there in January, sort of ready to go big for another year, and then suddenly this is on us, and you're going from thinking about significant growth to, oh my God, can we get through this? And and suddenly you're putting the brakes on, and worrying about basically maintaining cash. We realised early on cash is what's going to ride us through this. So try and reduce stock levels and basically pull in, which for a 25-year-old business that's grown every year, to think about even just plateauing, let alone actually reducing, is just not in our DNA. So it was just the most awful feeling, and thinking, how do we protect everyone's livelihoods and and just basically hunker down and get through it. And that was really soul destroying and a real mentally hard to get your head around. And I guess through that, then we started thinking about, well, actually, we started to hear about a lack of hand sanitizer, and that there were people, particularly gin companies that could get hold of alcohol and make hand sanitizer, but they had no bottles or filling facilities. So suddenly we realised, hang on, we're in a position, we've got loads of bottles because we've got warehouses full of stuff that we don't, we're trying to sort of reduce our stock holding. So actually we started, working with these companies and helping to get product to the NHS and frontline workers, because there was literally no PPE out there. So suddenly we pivoted onto that, which gave us, I guess, a positive focus of just like, well, let's hunker down and protect our business as best we can, but also at the same time start helping people. Well, that then ended up with us thinking, well, we can now actually get hold of alcohol and make our own sanitizer, which then was really took off, and so it was an immediate pivot and very bizarre and done in unbelievable time. I mean, the whole team just was on it, and we did minimal furlough really across the business. And we just focused on that for a long time. But what really freaked us out at the beginning was hearing that Spain and Germany and France had stopped banned cycling, not part of their sort of daily exercise. So we thought, God, if they do that in the UK, we've got literally no one's riding bikes. Luckily, the UK didn't ban cycling, so it actually massively grew the amount of people riding. Which was fantastic. And then as Germany, France and Spain started to relax those laws, the participation in cycling has obviously gone through the roof. So our core business then absolutely took off. So then we had the challenge of we've reduced production and cancelled raw component orders. So suddenly we had then coming into summer the absolute opposite problem of you've got a huge amount of orders and we can't supply it. So an emotional roller coaster is how I'd probably describe 2020, and we've ended up having a phenomenally good year and successful year, which is fantastic. But also, I know there's a lot of people out there that have had a really continue to have a very tough time, and in certain sectors it's absolutely brutal. But luckily for us, we've been the cycle market is remaining incredibly strong, and people still seeing people even now. It's kind of 0 degrees out there, still commuting to work and stuff. It's really cool. So it's definitely one to reflect on. I think it'll take quite a few years to kind of
it's just been
reflect on it. It's nuts.
Like you say, like the cycling industry has been I'm sure that we know there's other industries that have had a boom as well on that, but just an absolute roller coaster when you go from basically thinking we're going to have the worst year of our lives,
completely,
from a business perspective, to then having potentially one of your best ones.
Completely,
but I think from the outside looking in, obviously I work with you guys as an athlete, and we've worked with you guys for many years, so we get a little bit of an inside sort of scoop. I've been in the office, but during sort of that initial stage of lockdown, it was quite amazing to see how quickly you guys sort of mobilised and pivoted that side of the business. You obviously mentioned the bottling stuff. Like, what was the main obstacle in getting that sort of product or those selection of products to market?
It was, I guess our first priority was to protect our team. So we were very early on, I think probably one of the first companies locally that basically just shut down HQ and said everyone works from home. And luckily we'd been investing in kind of IT and infrastructure for many years, so we were pretty well set to basically look after everyone and get working from home. So that obviously then creates the challenge of trying to create a whole new product range around sanitizer and not we wanted to make the best typical Muc Off kind of DNA. We didn't want to just do a sanitizer and just get it out there. We wanted to do a very high alcohol level to make sure it's the best performance out there. So we wanted to innovate. We wanted to make a great product, just the same performance as you expect from any other Muc Off product. And trying to tie that in together while everyone's remote, learning to work remotely, where normally we're used to saying, guys, let's all get in a meeting room and smash this out and get it done. You can't do that. So, that was learning. Now it's just like, it seems like normal to be on a Teams call and do everything, online. But that was a big challenge. But I think, getting hold of the alcohol was a big problem, and just working with the right partners. And just learning about a whole new category, learning about compliance and all that side of it. So I guess it proved the talent in our team that everyone just took it on and just went for it. So it's a really good positive energy from it.
Yeah, it's cool. Yeah, it was really cool to see. So in terms of bottling, were you guys literally sort of using your sort of off the shelf like sort of lubes, bicycle lubes and stuff as bottles, or did they need to be modified in any way, or was it a case of just making do with what you had? Luckily,
because the specification of our bottles are with all the other products we put in them, that they were the perfect spec for a sanitizer. So it was really cool seeing our normal chain lube bottles being used as hand sanitizer by the NHS and stuff. It was really cool. So so we literally had them off the shelf ready to go, and all we needed to do was change the seals slightly in our filling equipment, and we bottled them and went for it. So
cool. One thing I also noticed was there was obviously, you need to be very mindful in a situation like this. Obviously you've got to continue as a business, but I think people were very sensitive to say sort of price. And one thing I did notice with you guys, you priced them at a very reasonable level. Was that something that you had to sort of really carefully consider in terms of like how to price point that? Because I noticed the masks as well, which I presume probably came a little bit later, because I imagine that's maybe a little bit more difficult. But one thing I did saw was they were pretty affordable.
Absolutely, I mean, it was really important for us that the main goal for that, we never thought the sanitizer would be something that would sort of help us through the initial stages of the pandemic. It was really just purely just to help get product to people, and hearing that there's stores of alcohol and no bottles to put them in, it was just like, well, this just doesn't feel right, and people are, you know, dying in hospitals, and the frontline workers can't, you know, sanitize themselves. So it started as that, and then when we realized that actually there's a need, people just want it, and we'll sell it. Yeah, it was really important to us to not, you know, we don't want to look like we're making money from this and doing it. So it's really important that that retail price was something accessible to everyone, and I think that's again a continuation of our DNA as a business. We want people to use our product and enjoy it, and not feel that we're just rare prices. So. But the same with the masks. There's some brands out there charging extreme amounts of masks and just basically cashing in on a need, which is not. It's not the spirit of Muc Off, and it's not the spirit. I think
it's a very fine line, isn't it, between like what's an appropriate amount to kind of keep your business flowing,
absolutely,
but then also not really sort of taking advantage of the situation.
100%.
So I think you guys got it pretty spot on, to be honest. So and then I guess like what you mentioned before, the sort of the hand sanitizer thing obviously was a big thing, but then the cycling industry, when we all sort of least expected it, just exploded. It was such a sort of weird feeling in terms of like for ourselves, obviously within the industry. Where do you kind of do you think that sort of growth in cycling is going to be sustainable, or do you think it's going to be a little bit of a sort of short-lived sort of spike that may then sort of, I don't want to use the term bubble, but do you know what I mean? What are your kind of thoughts, or do you think people are going to get addicted to bikes because we all know how good they are? What's your sort of thoughts on that?
I think it's going to continue. I think maybe not at the same growth level as people start to think, maybe kind of summer onwards, as people start taking holidays and stuff, maybe that will counter that growth. But I still think there'll be growth there. And I think the really interesting thing is the uptake in e-bike, because I think if you've not been riding bikes much and then you go and buy an e-bike and realise the thrill of, if maybe you've had a stroke or something and you've not been able to exercise, and you can get on something and enjoy something you used to do and have that extra help from the motor. The thrill of riding an e-bike, I think that will ensure that people are going to keep going, because certainly people I know that from all age groups that are into e-bikes are just, whether you're kind of a ripper or you're just 60, 70 years old and just getting back into fitness, everyone's got a smile on their face with it. So I think e-bike is definitely a big driver that will mean there is growth going forward, and that won't slow down. I also think all the improvements on road, cycle lanes, certainly locally, there's certain areas where they've put now proper divisions in place, so there's a natural barrier between you and the cars. So commuting around here has gone through the roof, and like I said earlier, even in the bad weather, I thought maybe in the bad weather the roads would be quieter of cyclists, but still seems loads of people riding along the beach in the morning. It's like a highway of cyclists. So I think it's just a huge maybe tipping point for cycling, people just embedding it into their life, that I think it's just been wonderful, and I think it will grow, but just maybe not at the same rate. It's been mind-blowing.
It's been absolutely insane, hasn't it? It's cool to see, like say on regular bikes as well as e-bikes, just like say you're the same as myself, don't need to be sold on bikes, but it's cool to see people that, like friends that maybe weren't riding before, kind of come in and fall in love with it. So
and seeing people on bikes, families out on bikes that clearly have not seen the light of day for many years, and it's great for us because they clearly need maintenance, and they've got very dry, squeaky chains and things. So that's what's cool, is seeing like these just random bikes appearing and people just riding them and loving them, and that's just cool.
Cool. So that's 2020, which has obviously been a mad one. I think it'd be really interesting to talk a little bit about, well, maybe a lot about how the brand has got to where it is today. Tell us a little bit about that, the sort of the origins of the sort of X-Lite and Muc Off brand, and where it all began.
100%. I mean, we started. It's a story that we kind of really fell into Muc Off, and we started back in. The story really starts right back when I was at school. When I was about 15, my Saracen got stolen from school, which was my pride and joy. I just loved, I was obsessed with mountain biking. So that got stolen from school, and we went on a family holiday, a few months later, to Florida. And basically I was looking for a new bike, and I was looking for a Trek, and we couldn't find a Trek dealer anywhere in Florida near where we were staying. So we basically stumbled across a Klein dealership, and it was just like they were insane. Like we couldn't believe it. Just oversized aluminium and just something just completely. It was like bike 2.0, just completely different and to anything, chromoly and thin tubing. So basically, I taught my dad into like bringing one back and cool. In our hand luggage, and that one didn't become my bike. We actually sold that in the back of the UK. But ultimately, I managed to get one of these Kleins off Dad over by just sort of just driving him crazy, screaming, "Please, can I have one?" And anyway, so my dad had just sold his. He had a motorcycle luggage business which he sold. And then an advertising company which he also sold just before we went to the States. So he was kind of looking for something to do. So
was your dad? Was he in the sort of manufacturing side of things with the motorcycle stuff, but then also into marketing as well, essentially?
Yeah. So he was. I mean, he was when he was a young guy. He was a motorcycle racer, so a circuit racer. And he made all his own bikes and fabricated all his own frames and everything. So he always loved working with his hands. He was obsessed with design and innovation, really. Cool. So he made one of his companies in the 80s was a company called Eurodesign, which made motorcycle luggage. So, all welded racks to fit every type of motorcycle, and soft luggage and hard luggage and fairings for the bikes and stuff. All made in Bournemouth, and he grew that and then sold that. So he always loved working with his hands, but he was always what was unique is he was good at marketing. He always had good brand and good visual imagery. Believed a lot in photography, and he was quite arty. So
cool.
He loved that kind of visual imagery.
Quite unusual to have sort of tick both those boxes, really, isn't it?
Totally.
Usually it's kind of one or the other.
It really is, and I think that's what made him such a unique guy. And so. Basically, he just loved anything around performance, speed, mad about anything on wheels, being a big racing fan. So I had this Klein, lovely aluminium frame, but horrible cheap chromoly forks on it. I had the Pinnacle, which was the sort of the entry level Klein at the time, and it didn't have the nice mission control front and direct fork as the Attitude had, which is what I wanted. But so anyway, Dad was like, "Well, hang on, why is that fork? It's so it looks rubbish, and why isn't it a twin crown fork like a motorcycle? It's paddling.
You're giving up all that stiffness, essentially.
Exactly.
That you must be used to seeing on the motorbikes.
Absolutely right. Just all that control is just going to one point. So he set about designing a twin crown fork, and he hand welded it together in our garage, bent the tube and everything, and suddenly we had a twin stem and twin crown fork, which I was rocking around with when I was kind of 16 years old.
Turning some heads.
Yeah, totally. It was nuts, and just the bike alone looked mad, but with the twin crown fork, it looked unbelievable. So that was really cool, doing some early R&D, and ultimately he went on to get patent the world's first twin crown fork. Okay. And then he slowly, started getting into the cycle market, understanding that, lightweight, everyone's obsessed with weight, and everyone's, weighing everything, and, everything's going aluminium, or titanium was just starting to come out then to the market. So that gave birth to, he came up with the brand name X-Lite, and that gave birth to X-Lite, and we started making bar ends in our garage at home. And they were super light. They were the lightest ones in the world, and we couldn't believe the demand of them. It was unbelievable. So we literally had a production in our garage at home, and we were, rumbling and knurling and doing everything in the garage, and coming back from school and packing bar ends in front of the TV and stuff. It was nuts, and clearly there was a really interesting market there. And Dad went on to sell the design rights to Raleigh for the fork. Unfortunately, they never really invested in the tooling and got it into production. So they kind of let the patents lapse, and the rest is kind of history.
Yeah,
really. So
it's
quite a sad end to the fork. But the business was roaring on bar ends, and we developed that into handlebars, and it's a whole history of X-Lite right through. But about 94, we started to realise that our anodising was, we were getting customers saying, "Love the bar ends, but the anodising's faded, and I'm using, this truck wash or traffic film removal, fairy liquid to clean it, and ultimately it's slowly over time corroding it." So we thought, well, everyone's going out getting muddy. There's no specific bike cleaner, so let's invent our own one. So we set about doing that, and we the brand colours for Excite were black and pink at the time, so we wanted to make it a bright pink. Dad, as a kind of visual kind of marketing guy, said we want it to pop on the shelf and really look different and unique. And we want to make it biodegradable, so it's always biodegradable from day one. And we worked with a local chemical company to develop it, and long time testing, and learning about filling bottles and all that kind of stuff. And Dad came up with the name Muc Off. And, I'll never forget it. I was there when he kind of came up with it, and I thought, God, that's a bit, it's a bit risky. I don't know if people will like it, And he was like, no, it's really cool. It's that's where it came from, and it started, and for years it was just really a few boxes here and there. We did then work with Loctite to do a whole range of thread locks and hand washers and stuff like that, and that was really interesting, but again way ahead of its time. And even now, still people don't use thread locks. Maybe wheel builders and things do, more in the shops. But for consumers, that's not really a thing. So that side didn't really work. But we were left with our own Muc Off kind of product, and we grew from there. And really slowly, as Excite got harder and harder towards the kind of late 90s, it got a lot of the US brands had then invested in tooling in China and Taiwan, and were making fantastic quality products at a quarter the price we could, and it was really hard to compete, and it just got harder and harder. So, but Muc Off was a growing thing, so we just put more energy into it, but we always wanted to market it in a fun way. We wanted to give it a personality.
I always remember, like, as a young rider coming through, I remember that obviously the X-Lite adverts and stuff in the magazines, and then obviously afterwards the Muc Off stuff. Yeah. Was that all still happening just with yourself and your dad? When I'm seeing like those ads, again, I can't remember the exact dates. Is that all still coming out of your sort of basement and garage kind of thing?
So we'd probably, by about 97, 98, we'd moved to a small unit in Branksome. But we were still doing everything in-house. We were doing all our, we were doing photography, we were doing all the ad design, everything in-house. So, we were, it was such busy, crazy times, but a real family, everyone in the family was in the business, and it was intense times. Yeah. But I guess I learned, and I got more and more weekends and stuff. My weekend kind of pocket money was just, cutting bits of metal and bending, bar ends and things like that. So I was learning that kind of cottage
some
industry.
Education to have
really
alongside school. You're just basically getting like a sort of crash course and
completely.
Sort of a startup essentially, isn't it?
Totally, and 100%. That's exactly it. And I think that I went to Bournemouth College to do business course, just a BTEC kind of business, and I found it so boring, because I was saying, well, I kind of, that what was in a textbook was like, well, that doesn't make sense to a really small cottage. I couldn't really correlate it, and I was just bored, and I just desperately, any afternoon off lessons, I'd be straight in helping, do work. So I couldn't, so I quit college and went to work full-time for Dad, but made all the, by that point we were doing wheel QRs and stems, and I was doing all the production for that, so very hands-on. Cool. Literally there with my mum, kind of bonding bar ends and thousands of bar ends and stuff like that, and learning all about different bonding techniques and manufacturing techniques. So I guess that kind of engineering's always been in my blood. I've loved that side of it. And I think working with the athletes at that point, it was really fantastic, seeing, something come from Dad's mind. He never used a computer. Everything was hand-drawn. And then, going to prototype form, and then going to the athlete, and then the athlete giving feedback, and then, change it again, then, in-house testers, athlete tests again for a final sign-off, and then production. So I guess I cut my teeth learning that kind of process with engineered parts. And but probably by the late 90s and early 2000s, the range was only probably, it was Muc Off and bike spray, which is the protectant we developed, and that was kind of it really. It was literally just 2 or 3 products, and different size variants of the cleaner. But we started to get into the motorcycle market in the year 2000, as we're getting loads of motorcycles going, I I'm a cyclist and a motorcyclist, and I use it on both, and you should really sell it in this market because it's so safe on anodizing components, but really effective. So we thought, oh, well, we're doing really well in bicycles. You know, we're starting to get UK dealers are all taking stock, and it's going well. And still, there wasn't much competition of anyone else really making stuff. So we thought, oh, we'll just go into the motorcycle market and it'll be easy. But we learned, again, it was a life lesson for me that you're en masse in a enthusiast market. No one knows of you.
Yeah, for sure.
The amount of cycle crossover is pretty minimal.
Yeah,
and you go to shows and stuff. You're starting from square one,
yeah.
and you're just having the same conversation with people. So what is it? What I don't understand. What does it do? Why do you need a specific? I use Ferry liquid. Yeah. So you have to start that whole conversation about Ferry liquid can be full of salt and it's corrosive, and you shouldn't really you should use something that's safe for all the components. It's thoroughly tested on all the materials used on a bicycle or motorcycle, and you think, wow, this is really uphill, and it was really tough. Yeah. And we almost gave up with it really early on because we just thought we haven't got the money to market ourselves in two industries. But it's slowly start to take hold, and again, you just see each show you went to, each event you went to, and most weekends we were just in a field or an event somewhere, just
not
talking.
Your high-end sort of consumer events that you see these days. It's just races and all sorts. So.
Totally grassroots, and you learn. If you forget the hammer or something to put a stake in the ground, you learn. You have to be, got very self-sufficient. You learn. Again, it's being in the UK in bad weather in the field, trying to sell your product is can be a tough gig, and you've got to be prepared and organised. So I learned all that as well. Millions of events we've been doing over the years. But what we found is slowly as we did more events, the conversations got more people saying, I've heard about this, or my mate uses that, and you think, that groundswell is starting to happen, and it just then gets a little bit easier and easier and easier in terms of consumer awareness. So that's kind of where we were, and then sadly 2004 my dad passed away suddenly. So I at that point I'd convinced Dad to buy a Mac, and I'd started doing graphic design, and we bought a digital camera. So I was kind of doing all our catalogues in-house and all the ads myself, and just literally learned, using Quark Express and some in early Illustrator. I look back at the ads now and I sort of shudder with shame that I designed the VH. So I went from doing the marketing to suddenly running the company with my mum and sister, which was clearly a huge shock, and you're suddenly just faced with a whole new reality and world, and your kind of little family bubble has just been blown sky high, and you're on your own, and you're meeting the bank manager suddenly, and you're stuff I didn't know anything about, cash flow or profit and loss, or and also Dad just bought 2 new factories, so on top of trying to get our head around losing Dad, we were suddenly moving factories, and his workshop was like a mad professor's workshop. Yeah, so
only he'd kind of know where everything is and how things operate.
It was like moving that and boxing that up, and then boxing up production and the warehouse and everything. Doing all that when I think I was 28, 29 at the time. And you go from just being a bike bum really to suddenly running a business, and wow, it was a real baptism by fire. And it probably, as I say that now, it's probably been all that kind of stuff helps you in something like 2020 when you're suddenly met with a
I guess there must have been quite a lot of parallels in terms of the emotions and stuff, because just hearing that, it must have been such a sort of tumultuous time for you to obviously lose your father in such a sort of sudden way, and then not really being able to sort of process that and getting sort of just chucked into the deep end of having to run the business when you're not expecting that, because I guess you're probably, would you be right in saying that you were expecting you to transition into taking over the business at some point, but just not under those circumstances?
100%, exactly, you've hit it on the head. I mean, it was, Dad was starting to think about retiring, and he'd bought a nice Morgan kind of car to go off travelling with Mum and stuff, so he was it was that kind of unspoken, I guess, or unplanned kind of, he wanted to take afternoons off, and he was trying to take he promised Mum he'd take Fridays off. He never did it once because he was just a workaholic and just loved what he did. It exactly what was happening. And he was, Dad was fantastic because he always wanted me there whenever we were doing meetings or meeting customers or, difficult conversations with people. I was always there with him. So I was luckily, I knew all our customers, I knew the suppliers. I was never kind of sheltered away from the realities of running a family business when you don't have much money or funding. You've got every decision you make is make or break, and it's just that mindset that you think, if I get this wrong, if this distribution deal isn't right for us, there's no buffer, there's no barrier. That's you've just got yourself to maintain. So I guess luckily he'd prepped me for all that kind of stuff, but still, massive.
Could have maybe been done with a few more years.
I could have done with a few more years and a nicer, gentler transition, but just this massive smash of like, right, you're running it and moving, the production and trying to finish the factories were new factories, so they weren't even built. So suddenly I was working with the builders, trying to plan production and buy bottling equipment and compressors, and you certainly learn quick. But there's something, I guess, with bereavement, when you've got something to fight for, it makes a very powerful mindset. Actually, it really makes you very determined and focused. And I guess in a way, I mean, maybe mentally it's not the right thing to do, of kind of block it out, but in a way it was just I'm not even going to think about Dad. I'm going to think about him, but I've got a job to do. I've got to save the family, look after the family, and make this happen. And we've got staff to think about, and so it was just head down and just go for it and learn, and it worked. And our team, we only had 4 or 5 people, but they were all fantastic young guys. They were so committed. They absolutely gave it everything. It was just there was such a passion there that we just sucked it up and went for it. And we just kept growing. And the scary thing for me was starting to develop product. I'd never developed my own product that was literally on me to test, formulate with our chemist and do it. So that was, I'll never forget that feeling of actually, after like months and months of testing, like it was a degreaser. Right, and I was so stressed about it, thinking, when I push the button on this, hundreds of riders are going to put this on their prides and enjoy it. And it's terrifying. But again, you just learn that, you just believe in your testing and development, and that you just don't leave any stone unturned. You never rush development as much as you want to, because you're desperate to launch a new product and innovate. Show the world your innovations. But early on, we've always been very safe in terms of a lot of testing. So really the principles we still have today were very much forged all from my dad, and from that kind of period, I think, of very rapid learning. So crazy times. And then suddenly I'm running a business and but we weren't even exporting anything at that point. That was all UK. So we never sold anything abroad.
And so what sort of age did you say you were?
I was 28.
Okay, which is relatively young to sort of take over. I'm not sure of the sort of size of the business at that point. You mentioned there was, say, 5 employees. But
it was pretty small. It was pretty small, but still it was it was, I guess I'd describe it as, it was a proper business with, proper, with accountants and, and cash flow and different bank account. It was all that stuff that now it was obviously a small family business, but it still had, employment law and legislation, all the stuff you have to learn. And we're selling chemicals, there's lots of legislation we have to cover with that stuff.
Yeah, a lot of responsibility.
A huge amount to learn, Yeah,
I guess with as soon as there's one employee, there's the responsibility there. It suddenly steps things up a gear in terms of like who you're responsible for and sort of consequences of things. So it must have been quite a stressful time.
And you're not, I certainly at that point wasn't confident in my abilities. I was that age where you kind of, my priority was just skating and riding. Really, that's all I wanted to do. And just work and ride my bikes and skateboard. So suddenly I was confident in my abilities. Like I was racing, lots of downhill and cross country. So I loved my bike riding. So I was confident with bike riding, but business, so you have to learn that. you have to learn that that you know I can do this. I can do it, and that takes many years to build up that confidence of, you know, you self-doubt is you think, well, can I really have that difficult conversation with, you know, a supplier when there's an issue, or a customer when there's, you know, and you just have to learn that and slowly build up that confidence.
A lot of sink or swim moments, basically.
Totally, yeah.
That's cool. So you mentioned you're a keen downhill racer. Do you think the sort of experiences and stresses and the danger of sort of downhill riding was sort of give you some sort of coping mechanisms and skills that sort of help you deal? It's obviously completely different.
Yeah.
But do you think that could sort of has helped you over the years in terms of your business career?
Yeah, I think it has. I think I think business so much is like being a racer. You know, preparation, training. You know what. You know, like great races, I was never, you know, world class or anything, but it's seeing what makes a great racer and all the prep and the training and all of that background, you know, that people just see, you know, like say a Lewis Hamilton when they're winning world championships, it's easy not to see the you know, it's like they say, the days they don't see, the dark training days, the days where you're tired and you've got to still train and all of that stuff. And I think it's very much the same with business. It's, you know, people see success and the product and the brand and think, oh, that looks easy. They've just done that overnight. Well, it's you know, it's like, no, that's literally, you know, thousands and thousands of hours of training and that side. So I think the analogy of it is very similar. And I think, you know, particularly downhill racing, doing something that's got danger involved, and if you don't take risks, you can't be competitive, but it's controlled risk. So I think, you know, if you're just balls out and either, you know, crash or win, you don't ultimately become, you know, the best racer you can be. You've got to be, you know, you always take risks at some point, but ultimately, overall, you've got to be within your limits. Yeah. And I think that's the same with business. Yeah, it's definitely, we've been ballsy and taken risks in terms of growth. And I've always, you know, I've just developed a mindset that if we're going to do it, we're going to do it. And, you know, I'm not going to listen to doubters or naysayers, but you weigh up the risks. You know, it's controlled risk. So it's not, I never want to take risks that are just, you know, would cost everyone their jobs. Yeah,
it's just getting that balance, isn't it?
It's a balance. So I think there's a lot of things to look back on that and think it's very similar, you know? Yeah.
Do you think the sort of, the British mentality can sometimes hold us back? I'd say you guys seem to almost be an exception to that, but I definitely feel in the UK we're kind of embarrassed of failure, essentially, I suppose, sometimes, and kind of maybe makes us shy away from challenges that we should otherwise take, whether that's in sport or in business. I think
entrepreneurialism is if you flip it to America, entrepreneurialism seems to be more apparent and more embraced. It's that kind of American dream, and I think definitely there is a British spirit that can be, there's a reserved, a worry of kind of coming out of your shell and putting yourself out there and you know, stay a bit safer, or and I guess it's a kind of an inner belief. Certainly spending quite a bit of time in the States, there seems to be a much deeper inner belief they installed in a lot of people that they can be president, they can be you know, a successful business owner, and I think that's something that, you know, I think that's changing in the UK. I think there is more interest in entrepreneurialism and business, and I think it's celebrated more. Successes, you know, and I think probably the digital world with so many young successful people out there building phenomenal empires overnight, that's seen as, you know, really fascinating and interesting, and that's cool. I think that is changing. But early on, I think that I didn't know many other people that ran their own businesses, and that was quite lonely, really. And now there's more support hubs and much younger people just going out there and doing their own thing. And I think there's more avenues to do that now, which is very cool. Yeah, it's definitely, I think, it's, for want of a better word, I'd say entrepreneurialism's definitely become more fashionable. All over the place. It's interesting to say about America. I think I was reading a thing where they do talk about, especially in like sort of Silicon Valley and sort of West Coast and California, they almost talk about failure as like they wear it like a badge of honor. But like, almost like how many like startups did you like have until you sort of made it? And it's almost like
it sounds like they almost brag about it, whereas it's like the complete opposite here. It's quite interesting.
Yeah, absolutely, it's really fascinating you say that. It just seems to be like, that's it's almost more of a, they dust themselves off, and it's another sort of strike on the wall of like, I just keep going, and that tenacity just to keep driving through it, and it is, I think success is just a series of failures. It's I can't remember, was it Winston Churchill said it's, success is just going from failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm. And I think that's definitely it. You've just got to, and still now, running the business, I'm really just trying to defeat failure or negative problems every day. It's not, it's very rare to sit back and really enjoy what you've created and see, there's clearly massive moments of pride when you see riders such as yourself and athletes with Muc Off helmets on and seeing it around the world and stuff. That really means something. But day to day is just, how do I turn that, how do I get over that hurdle, how do I go around that wall, how do I fight that negative mindset, or how do I that's what you're just constantly battling and turning negatives into positives. So cool. It's a real interesting mindset to get yourself into.
So you've taken over the business. What year did you take over the business?
That was 2004.
2004. And it sounds like you're into the product stuff, but you sound like you're very into the marketing as well. At what sort of stage of that process did you really sort of start investing big in, say, like the athlete marketing? Because I guess in some ways, obviously Red Bull and stuff have done it, maybe previously to that, but quite a pioneer in terms of those sort of marketing techniques. Yeah. When did that all sort of come around, and when did you start pushing that? We were doing it a little bit in 2004. Well, I mean, 2004 was the first year we'd actually sponsored Rizzler Suzuki British Superbike team, which was the coolest team at the time. And we actually had we'd sponsored teams, I mean, like Team Rally and lots of teams and athletes in downhill, but never with much. Up until then, it was always with X-Lite branding, so never with Muc Off branding. So the Rizzler Suzuki deal was the first on a swing arm. It was the first branded sort of bike out there ever, and it was a huge moment and a terrifying expense for us at the time. Like, oh my God, what are we doing? Yeah. But so I think we just started that slowly, and I just really each year as we just grew, and we've grown every year since '91 really, which is fantastic. It's a lovely to see that kind of growth curve. But we've always been very bullish in terms of, I guess I probably turned up the notch in terms of the percentage of profit going into marketing budget. And every year it's still a big intake of breath going, crikey, I hope, you've got to commit to it before the growth comes. So that's the really hard thing is believing in your marketing strategy that it is going to ultimately sell more product. And when you correlate it to how many bottles of something you've got to sell, it's just always a terrifying formula. So but I think for me as a racer, I always wanted to support racers, and Dad was always very passionate about supporting youth development and helping support riders, because he never had any support himself. He had to do everything himself when he raced motorbikes. So it kind of, I guess the real big shift though was probably, I'd say about 5 years ago was when we started to sponsor people and actually have sprayed helmets. I think that has definitely where the brand's got more visual, and that Red Bull were obviously the masters of that, of creating sprayed helmets, and I remember really early F1 when they had drivers in helmets. It's just such an impact, and it was back then it was such a basic, simple design, wasn't it? But it really impacted, and I suppose we always wanted to get to a point where we could have the budget to pay a rider to have a sprayed helmet. So that's only really in the last 5 years or so. Cool. So did you kind of monitor Red Bull kind of quite closely? Were you always kind of like a fan of the brand and the way it did things, and very much like an inspiration for your guys' sort of athlete marketing strategy?
Massively, yeah. Red Bull would I just couldn't believe what they were doing. I thought it was so cool. And again, I loved that they did so much lifestyle around it. I thought the energy of Red Bull was just immense. And that for us, I guess that's probably been a real inspiration and something we followed, because I love that they've gone into art and music and other sports. You know, it's just blows my mind really. So and I guess they've got the same challenge we've always had. We're not a component manufacturer.
Yeah,
we don't make apparel, we don't make wheels or tyres, something that can pretty obviously see what the rider's using. You know, if they're using Muc Off chain lube, you can't tell. That bit of pink on the chain there, pretty tough. So we knew we had to sweat hard. You know, basically real estate on the rider. We had to, and Red Bull, Monster, they clearly, you know, all of the spin-off, you know, competitors that have come out of what Red Bull's early kind of genius and innovation, that you saw that clearly more than a bike brand. And that interested me that, you know, wow, then they're a non-core bike brand, and they're getting more impact than you know, a sort of well-known frame manufacturer or something. So that, I guess that just sort of just started to whirl away in my mind.
Nah, it's really cool, and I there's obviously whilst Muc Off and Red Bull are very different products, like you say, the marketing challenge. There's a big parallel in the marketing challenge. Like you say, it's not like a frame, it's not like a component. One other thing, I'm not sure how the sort of Muc Off business is structured, but one other thing that I thought was probably a potential parallel is being privately owned. And I suppose that would kind of be relevant in terms of athlete marketing, because I can only imagine if you say had stakeholders or shareholders, it'd be a very difficult conversation to say we're going to pay X thousand pounds to spray some sort of skater or biker that maybe somebody in a suit has never heard of. I can only imagine that'd be very hard sort of expense to justify, no clear sort of returns on investments. So is Muc Off is it a privately owned company, just with yourself and your family?
Yeah, exactly, 100% family owned, and it's not always been that way. So I've been there, done that journey,
okay, cool.
And probably it was about 2010, and again we'd seen kind of, you know, sites like Wiggle had taken on private equity, and I kind of thought, wow, they've really grown. It's really interesting to get an investor in. And I guess I've always been, I don't know if it was skating or downhill racing, but certainly skating, I think gives you a very independent mindset. You know, when you've just got a piece of wood on wheels and yourself, you know, you've got nowhere to hide with a curb and a board, and you've got nothing to blame but your own skill and your own kind of, you know, it's you on the street, and, you know, you're always skating in odd areas with sorts of odd people around. So it's kind of, you know, I think I learned pretty early on, you've got to look after yourself when you're kind of, you know, when you're skating. And I think that independence has always been in me. So I thought myself then thinking, I love doing what I kind of want to do things my way, but I also see I've always known there's so much more Muc Off could be and do, and there's so much positive energy when we talk to consumers, and the energy and excitement and feedback on our products. That's always been the fuel for growth and wanting to do more and be better. So it's always that feeling of like, well, I like to be independent, but there's a big world out there, and we're only, you know, at that point probably exporting to a few countries in Europe, and I know, you know, we could be big in the States, we could be big here. So, you know, money is a great catalyst for acceleration, and seeing what was happening in, you know, .com businesses where they take investment and they can blow up. So I was really interested in that, and I've always wanted Muc Off to be, I want everyone to know about it and use it, and the thrill of innovating a product and people trying it and enjoying it. I just wanted that to be everywhere. So actually we had an early angel investor who was a great guy, and he kind of helped, you know, he actually been part of Wiggle, as a founder of Wiggle, a guy called Mitch Dahl, and he was fantastic help. So he bought into the business early on, and that money really helped us grow and develop. And he was a great guy, still a friend today. and that grew. We then went on and did had another investor, which didn't go so well,
right, okay.
And that was a local firm, and they came in to help us mainly with our manufacturing and help us, guide us with the business, local entrepreneur. But that, what you just said was exactly what happened. He wasn't a marketeer. He wasn't a brand guy. He didn't understand that. Mm-hmm. He was just a numbers guy. And ultimately, that just became a difficult relationship.
Right.
And for me, I found it very... someone that likes to move quick and is really impatient and wants to, if I see an opportunity with marketing or a rider or a team, I just want to go after it.
Yeah.
And having to then at that point, Mitch was never, he always understood the journey of Muc Off, whereas the other investor, he never really got that. There was always friction. It was always like, let's just make that as profit. Why put that into a team? That doesn't make sense to me. He never understood that. So I was just getting more and more down, thinking I've got to convince someone, even though he wasn't a majority shareholder. I still wanted everyone
just a bit of
to
a
be,
bottleneck.
It was a bottleneck, and it just became more and more difficult. So, very, very long story short, we managed to buy him out in, I think it was 2013, 2014. But that taught me an awful lot. Ultimately, I didn't enjoy that situation at all. It was very difficult. The partnership with them was meant to mean that they would help us with manufacturing and operations. That didn't really work.
Okay.
So we were ended up with an operational mess. And but the learning for me was, I want to be fiercely independent. And the good thing is we managed to buy them out and move, and we bought Mitch out as well. So we're basically back to 100% ownership. Cool. So it was a painful few years, but probably I like to think of it as a very valuable lesson that I don't think I'd work very well with private equity or other, they were both private investors. Mitch was fantastic. The other guy, it didn't work out so well, but I think private equity would be a different level of challenge if things went wrong. They can be your greatest friends, and also, clearly they have to protect their investment. So I got out with my, by the skin of my teeth, paid everyone off, and went back to 100%. So a huge distraction, huge amount spent of time with lawyers, and just very demoralising, very hard when you've got to run a business. Yeah,
you want to get back into the fun. Well, I'm not going to say it's not all fun, but the rewarding stuff.
Absolutely, the core of the business, which is riding bikes and developing products for cyclists and motorcyclists, and that just, you suddenly become, you're just living in a corporate world of lawyers and contracts and difficult conversations, and knowing that this could tip me over the edge. You're already under massive pressure and strain I didn't have a board around me or many other people at senior level in the business, so you feel very isolated. So that taught me a lesson that I really do enjoy now, the speed of idea. I've got a fantastic board around me now, all again very can-do, very fast pace. There's definitely an energy and a speed in Muc Off that it's not for the faint-hearted, but for the right people. If you've got the right mindset, I think everyone loves being a part of it and enjoying the environment. But if you're not used to that pace, it's quite a whirlwind to get your head around how fast we do things. And,
it's been cool. It's been cool this week. Obviously, I've worked with you guys for quite a few years, and it's actually been the first time I've come and seen the office and stuff. So it's quite cool to see the team and seeing how it all goes down. It's quite cool. It's amazing actually to see. It's obviously there's a significant team, but there's not a huge amount of people there. And from what you actually end up seeing as a sort of forward-facing brand and products, it's pretty amazing what seems to get done. So
it's definitely a very, very busy group of amazing individuals, and people can't quite believe that we develop the amount of products we do and market ourselves with such a small team. But the team's grown a lot this year. We're over 100 people now as of this year. So we've recruited all the way through 2020, which again is awesome through the pandemic. But it's still, for what we do and the amount of categories we're in, the amount of products we have now, we're sort of over 300 different SKUs of products. So, and then there's variants of those in language, variants and sizes. There's thousands of SKUs of product to maintain and manage, and operationally it's it's a huge operation.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's busy.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's amazing to see. As obviously the business is growing, you're obviously the managing director. You're at the sort of helm, if you will. Was it quite a difficult thing to? I'm sure you just were getting busier and busier year on year as the business grew. Was that quite a challenge to basically find the right people and maybe let certain aspects of the business go and put faith in those people when you're used to kind of growing up with your dad having sort of full control in the basement or the garage?
Yeah, that I think that's been my biggest challenge. Is I'm probably a bit of a control freak by nature, and I love detail, and I obsess over detail, and that's why I just thoroughly love product development. I like to think of, probably most people when they have this product won't even notice most of these things, but for the people that notice them, it's really important. And so it's obsession, and we can be years developing a product that we would at any one of those stages be a great commercial success and a great product, but we just want to get it obsessively right. And that's an addiction, definitely. And letting go, and that runs through everything, whether that's finance, ops. I've always been passionate about the detail and having things just the right way. I was definitely the worst delegator ever. Delegation has been my biggest challenge, and ultimately the biggest reward is seeing that actually, even though you're working kind of 18-hour days some days and thinking, I just don't have weekends now, I don't have evenings. Most of that growth I kind of lived on my own and literally just worked in the office all day, went home, had dinner, worked all night, and then rode my bike as much as I could, and then worked all weekend. And that was really my life for many years. And I absolutely loved it. I don't regret any of that. I loved it. It's the most fulfilling work to create something and see it grow and other people believing in it. But ultimately I got myself pretty run down and ill, and I was just a run-down mess for most of that time. And you start to let your health go and things like that, and you think, hang on, this is not right. And it was only when I realised that I now can't sign off things as quickly as my designers or my accountant needs. My inbox is just getting so big. I'm spending my life doing email. And at that point, we were, developing, certain components in the Far East. We were running a European-based business, and then also doing stuff in the States. So getting up at like 5 a.m. and hitting all your kind of Far Eastern emails and correspondence and phone calls and Skypes, and then doing the day job, and then doing the same in the States was just soul destroying. It was really tough, and it was thrilling, and you could do it for so long, but it's ultimately not sustainable. And then it was only one day it just dawned on me that, oh my God, I'm the bottleneck. I'm the problem. I'm not actually, you think, well, I'm such a hard working, I'm the one making this happen. I'm driving it. And you actually then realize, no, I'm actually the one holding it back. So that was quite a defining moment of like letting go. And it's still today, it's a bit like that racing analogy of risk of like, do I let that go? And when you let it go and think, God, I'm giving that person a big responsibility. I hope they do it right. And when you see them nail it and think, actually, they did it better than I probably could have done. Yeah. So that is really fantastic, just to see whole things. And now there's whole divisions that I'm not involved with. I'm still clearly through a senior level structure. I'll get to see feedback or reporting, but day to day I'm not involved at all. And seeing those things grow, like the US market, I'm not that close to the US team. That's handled by my sales director, and seeing what the amazing stuff those guys are doing, and I'm not sort of in the boot of my car in the muddy field, kind of selling the product. It's a great journey. To
it's still rewarding, I guess, in its own right.
Totally, really, because it's always been that my goal has never really changed. Of just like, how can we get this global and get as many riders to experience that they can maintain their bike in a much easier way and make their stuff last longer and enjoy their riding more, which is that whole ethos hasn't really changed. So and it's to see that happening, and it's kind of now like, wow, it's got its own energy. It's kind of like, let it go and let it do its thing, and it's much bigger than certainly just me now. So that's a whole different reward and different place to be, and it's ultimately letting me do the stuff I want to do. I love the product in innovation and development, and that's where probably 80-90% of my time is on product. So, there's clearly other responsibilities and MD I have to do, but with a great board, I'm basically allowed, and that's what this space is about. It's about me really just clearing my head and just, innovating. Yeah,
it's very interesting to see the sort of setup you have here. I guess it's partly a space issue at sort of Muc Off HQ with an ever-increasing team. But yeah, you've got this sort of setup where you've kind of allowed to kind of tinker around essentially, but at the same time you're only about a mile or so away from the sort of head office essentially.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I found that I had a kind of an office and there's a workshop and everything at the office, but I guess I've always been a bit of a loner, my whole life, but I really need complete peace to do what I do, and it's really hard with an interruption or just something going on, or if I want to go and work on a bike, and particularly when I'm working on a bike with a product, I'm so deeply absorbed in my head. If anyone distracts me, I guess I'm just a very simple bloke who just can only think of one thing at a time, if something else happens, my thoughts are kind of just like smashed away. So I like to work in peace and also in a creative environment. I love art and design stuff, so I like to immerse myself in a kind of creative area, and it's a real luxury to be able to have your own unit like this and work in that way. So it's been a real dream of mine to have a kind of a separate workshop, but still only be just a mile up the road. So, and I still have lots of meetings. I'm having lots of daily meetings here, but ultimately, when I need to focus on innovation, I can do that in complete peace. So it's just the odd way I work, but it's great.
I'm just looking around here. Obviously, some nice toys and stuff, but I also noticed you got quite a selection of books there.
Yeah.
Is there I'm seeing a few autobiographies and stuff.
Yep.
Is there a specific or a selection of, say, people, whether it's in the business world or sporting world, that you sort of really look up to and take inspiration from?
Yeah, I mean, I love autobiographies. I love reading about other people, particularly business people. I mean, I think there's Charles Revson from Revlon is a great book. It's quite hard. I don't think it's published anymore. It's quite a hard one to get, but he created Revlon cosmetics, and again just did it himself, and was very much a product guy. His favourite days were the days in the lab. I think he became the richest guy in America, or maybe even the world at some point, but certainly the richest guy in the States, but he was a product guy. He built an empire, but still focused on lipsticks and kind of nail varnishes and the shades and stuff, so even at that level. So that's an interesting read. But I love listening to and hearing podcasts and reading books about people, but also some great marketing books. I mean, books I love, The Tipping Point is a great marketing book. That's a fantastic one, really interesting about how brand, ultimately you can put the sort of the psychology and the mindset of what that book represents straight into a brand. It's really interesting about how things ultimately reach a tipping point. It's fascinating. And the other book I love is I can't remember the guy that owns Cliff Bar, but the Cliff Bar book.
Gary Erickson.
That's it. Yeah, that's a great book.
Yeah, I'm actually, sorry to interrupt you a bit. It's actually really interesting that you mentioned that, because I've listened to a podcast and I've read quite a lot about him, and I would say there's actually quite a lot of parallels with the Cliff Bar story and his story. Being his dad's, not necessarily wasn't as involved, but his dad was actually he's Cliff essentially, which is really interesting. Obviously it works because there's the cliffs like into climbing and outdoor and stuff, but also the sort of struggle that he had with the investors and stuff like that, or he actually didn't end up going through it. I think he kind of pulled the plug in at last minute and then had to find all this money and stuff. So it's quite interesting you say that.
Well, did you know that honestly, that book got me through that period of my life, because a lot of my advisors, lawyers and people around me were saying, you don't need to buy this company out, this investor out. You don't need to, just keep them there. It's only a small, don't worry about it. And I knew, if I have to do this, and it, the tenacity, I should have let go many times and just said, you know what, I'll just keep them there and whatever. But that book, when he said, you know, that chapter where he had, I think it was Kraft Foods, he had a huge
it was like
80 million or something offer, and everyone was saying do it, and he went to go and sign, and then he walked around the block and then thought, I'm not doing it. And then he owed his other partner millions, had to buy her out and stuff.
So I guess it's almost what I thought was obviously Cliff Bar is a massively valuable company now, but it sometimes seems that those companies almost get bought for more than their kind of worth to that person. So he then had to find 50% of whatever it was, like 260 million, and then taking that on and putting so much at risk when he could just have gone to a desert island and lived
completely. But I think that's what that made me. I think that's where it's pretty lonely being an entrepreneur, and you think, am I mad? Am I mad trying to spend so much money on lawyers and so much fight to get this done, just to and then ultimately pay a huge amount of money that you don't have, and I had to borrow money to buy them out, and put myself in debt for just basically a belief that independence is better. And when I read that book, I thought, he's right on. He's right there. And still now they're just, and what a phenomenal company Cliff Bar is. You know, again, they're one of those brands you go to see at a trade event like Interbike. They're just full of energy. The booth is beautifully done. Everyone you meet from Cliff Bar is like, you know, super good energy. You can tell that's just like a core DNA from. I always think that comes from the top down, and I love that fierce independence is there, and the focus on the product development and stuff. So that was a really powerful book to read. So it gave me that strength of in some dark moments of like.
So had you read that story just kind of as you were going through it before that? Or?
Weirdly, I was on a Rafa cycling holiday. Rafa invited me to a cool cycling holiday, which is lovely, in Provence. And one of the guys, I was talking at that point, I was going through this problem with this investor. And one of the guys said, I guess one night after a long ride, I think I'd probably done Von2, and I'm not a mountain climber, I'm a heavy guy, so it was probably one of the most soul-destroying things I've ever done in my life, and I was pretty broken, so I think I probably was quite emotional and poured my heart out to him about you know, what a nightmare I'm in, and this is difficult, and he said, that's just like the Cliff Bar, and he'd met Gary, and he was like, I know him from San Francisco, but he was like, read this book. It is just literally, I can't believe it's like what you're going through. And I literally went home, bought it and read it cover to cover. I'm a really slow reader. I'm not a fast reader. I literally read it cover to cover, and I was just, it was like it was like Popeye having his spinach. It just gave me this amazing strength to say, I'm not alone. There's other people with this same kind of mindset, which we now call kind of pirate mindset. It's that kind of independent, and we get that from kind of Apple, early Apple. They always flew the pirate flag because they were fiercely independent, and we love that. Muc Off, that's what we always talk about in our kind of company presentations and things. It's like, we're fiercely independent, and we're on our own ship, and we can do what we want, and that gives us a killer competitive advantage over a big corporate, for sure.
That's cool. Yeah, you say obviously the getting all that this sort of power back essentially, and not having to sort of be accountable to anyone, I'm sure has helped loads. But do you still feel, even with that taken into consideration, do you still feel it's quite an ongoing challenge to sort of keep that sort of punk rock sort of attitudes and sort of approach whilst the company continues to grow?
Yeah, it is, because now we're over 100 people, so it definitely gets more challenging to do that. But it also, that scale allows you to, have the time to invest in, at the moment we're doing our own Muc Off brand book just for our own team.
Yeah, okay.
It will never be kind of shared outside of our four walls, but really to start to educate, because there's a lot of new people. I mean, with the pandemic and most people working remotely, there's probably 40 people in the company I've not actually met, which is very strange. And not, I like to be around people, to meet them and talk to them. So it's very strange in that sense, but it gives us certain mechanisms to be able to say, this is where we've come from, this is our DNA, and this is where we do. But it's definitely it's part of that recruitment process, is you want people that are to me, I'm a rule breaker. You know, you've got to have rules, and in business, there's certainly with compliance and legislation and ultimately laws, you can't break a lot of rules. But I don't like rules. I'm definitely a person that is a creative, likes to think, well, it doesn't have to be that way. So it's really important for us as we bring people into the business that they've got, you know, a mindset of kind of can do, and it's very easy just to kind of, you know, you can get people that are complainers and just sort of say all the reasons why they don't want to do something or why we shouldn't do it that way. And that's not, you know, the Muc Off spirit. We're kind of like, we'll do it. Let's fix all the reasons. You know, there's loads of reasons why we can't do everything, but let's just smash them out the park and just meet them head on and find a way. There's always a solution to every single problem. There really is. It's just how much deep thought you give something and the spirit and energy to ride you through that. So it's very much about, you know, maintaining that through the teams, and we're doing that really well. So
cool. So it'll be an interesting Christmas party, or maybe in 2021
exactly,
we get to kind of finally all get together and sort of like names to faces.
After a really tough year, it seems, but a really successful year for the business, it's really frustrating not to all celebrate together. So I've promised everyone we'll have a hell of a party next year when we're allowed to, just to spend some time and just have some positive energy away from the grind would be wonderful. But it just seems so far away with the way,
and you don't even know when it's going to be.
You never know when it's going to be, but for sure it will be party time.
That's cool. Another thing I was wanting to talk to you about was sort of sustainability and environmental side of things. Obviously, being in the cycling industry, which is in terms of the environment, I hope it's a sort of net positive. Is that something you guys? I've obviously seen you guys doing a lot of the sort of refill stuff and cutting back on plastic. Is that something you guys are pretty passionate about moving forward? It's a really big thing, and actually there's a massive amount of work going on behind the scenes. We've got some big stuff happening for 2021 on sustainability, and a lot of that's around plastic, but also just in terms of ingredients we use, and we've done so much overpacking over the years of things to make things look pretty, like a lot of brands haven't. We've certainly, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit. So we started a project last year called Project Green, and so far we've saved 8.5 tons of plastic so far, but we haven't even started. There's so much more to go. So to do it properly, the challenge is with packaging is that there's a lot of investment needed to be able to get rid of a lot of the plastic. So we've been investing this year in a lot of tooling to reduce plastic, but probably it'll be another 6 months or so before that comes out. But we've been pushing our concentrate usage. A bottle of Muc Off you get probably 5 to 10 bike washes out of, depending on how dirty the bike is. But that bottle and the trigger is spec'd, it can last 12 months plus. The bottle can last for years if you don't drop it. So that's the concentrate for us, and we've been doing that for many years, but we've really kind of turbocharged our awareness of it to say, please don't just throw that bottle after 5 or 6 uses in the bin. It can have hundreds of uses. So we come up with an in-store refill centres for dealers, so you can have a 25 litre and you fill that. So that's been super successful. The concentrate is growing. More and more consumers are switching to that, which is great. But we've also got some other innovations coming this year, which are really exciting. But it's a big thing, and also in terms of the chemistry of our products, there's lots happening there, which is really interesting. We've always been very, very driven to make biodegradable, sustainable formulas. So we're a very good starting base for that. But there's always what's hard for us as a performance company. People buy our product to perform. You don't just buy a pink bike clean just to spray on. It doesn't clean. It's got to work. Just getting that balance, really.
There's always a natural tension between performance and sustainability, and that's, luckily now we're at a scale where we've got our own full-time chemists now and full-time labs that are working on sustainable. And what's really exciting with modern science is there are now ingredients coming through that are better than the synthetic alternative, and that's really cool. So I can't wait to kind of reveal what we've got coming for next year, because we've improved performances on many things and gone way more sustainable right the way through. So yeah, lots going on that, but it's many years of work before we even get to show, you know, a rider what we've been working on. So it's frustrating because we want to shout about what we're doing a bit more, but you know, we there's some really interesting innovation around that, so we're very excited about that.
It must be quite it must be a hard balance, because you must almost be kind of undoing quite a lot of expensive infrastructure and processes that you've put together.
Yeah, but it's so rewarding knowing that you know, you can really you know, drive innovation and really push very talented kind of scientists and ingredient manufacturers to a new high and a new level, but it's a constant investment, and we spend more and more of our budget each year on that innovation, and you get a real kick out of, you know, because we can talk a lot more in data now. So we've invested heavily in a lot of tribology equipment, so we can talk in data. The same with cleaning. We've now got cleaning testing where we can talk in a number, which is not, you know, just a subjective view of, is that cleaner better than that? We can actually say, it with our latest testing, that cleaner performs better than that, cool, and here's the data behind it. So there's a lot of that we haven't talked about yet, but that's all brewing in the background. So it's really cool to be able to talk in data and say, oh my God, we've actually enhanced, you know, the best of its type, and it's fully sustainable. And that's cool. So yeah, it's a lot of work, but such rewarding work. So
yeah, I think it's quite cool to sort of maybe pave the way a little bit for the cycle industry, because I think the cycling industry can almost, obviously every brand's different, some are good with sustainability, some are not. Do you think it's important that the cycling industry doesn't sort of rest in its laurels of just kind of saying, well, we're doing so much for the environment anyway, we're getting so many people out of their cars or something, we can get a little bit of a pass on maybe our sort of production processes not being the most environmentally friendly or sustainable? Yeah,
I think you're absolutely right. I think there doesn't seem to be a huge amount of sustainable innovation coming out of the bicycle market, which is, like you say, by rights, a very environmental kind of low carbon footprint. But yeah, that's something that we're really interested in. We're talking with industry groups about how do we create more of that for the industry as a whole, because I think that there is a lot of improvement to be done, and you know, things like carbon fibres and things are not the most you know, carbon neutral you know, materials and things, and is there innovation there to improve that? So yeah, I think there absolutely is that kind of a bit more of a relaxed nature, whereas if you're probably in the airline or car industry, there's a massive need to be much better for the planet. But we see huge amounts to drive in that for sure.
Yeah, that's cool. So looking back, you've been involved with Muc Off and X-Lite for so many years. Is there? It's probably hard to pick one. Is there any sort of, whether it's a product or maybe even a marketing campaign that you look back and it really sort of stands out as being like a sort of real proud moment, or is it hard to pick?
Do you know, it's really hard to pick actually. But I think there's for us a lot of the work we did with Team Sky on the roadside with the hydrodynamic lube and the drive chain clean, that was really interesting because that was very new for us, going from being a mountain bike brand into road, and really high performance in terms of the kind of wattage and the torque loads on the chains. So that was really interesting, and it was the first kind of product we brought kind of animation into the launch and the content with it, and working with, you know, the top riders on the roadside. That was interesting because it was the first time we had to bring data. Again, Team Sky wanted data. They didn't want to say, well, of course you're going to say it's great lube, it's your company, but tell us in fact in cold hard numbers. So that was very cool, and that was a pivot for the whole business. So I love that racing improves the breed, and you know, win on Sunday, sell on Monday, kind of Enzo Ferrari mindset. He always used to say that, and I love that. You know, it's not just a sponsorship, it's not just paying money to someone to slap your name on their bike or their jersey. It's actually every rider that buys a Muc Off product gets that racing improvement, and I love that, and I love that that's a genuine, not just a piece of marketing spin. It's a genuine straight through to the everyday rider. That's just, it's a big part of what we do. So I think that was a big pivot, because that forced us to talk in data, and we couldn't just test ourselves and say, God, that feels really good. That looks, we've done 100 miles in this weather and 100 miles in that, and 10 riders have done this. That feels really good. We do all that as well, but we can now put it on a machine that tells us, in fact, they're not lying, or that is worse than that, and that's better than that. So that's changed a lot of the business and created a whole development lab, which is now, in our eyes, the best of breed, in terms of development and drivetrain optimization, which is really cool. And working with Olympic teams and top athletes on that stuff, on cutting edge data and friction reduction is really cool. Yeah. So that was a big one, but there's been so many. I mean, Commensal team this year has been Muc Off Commensal downhill team.
That must have been quite a surreal moment to sort of see that sort of.
And again, because of social, I've not seen the truck. I've not even met the guys much. So that's hard. But to see the truck with Muc Off on and all the riders, and that's been a big moment. So it continues to be big moments throughout, which is thrilling. And, some really great ones coming for next year as well. Yeah,
has there been, whether it's been recently or maybe a few years where, has there been any sort of moment that you really sort of hits home the sort of scale of what you've done? Because I would definitely say for myself, obviously I've been working with Muc Off for a few years now. I would say I've probably noticed it in the last maybe couple of years, where people are maybe recognising the brand a little bit more, like they would say Red Bull or GoPro or something like that. And I've noticed just in the last couple of years that people will be like, oh, like Muc Off kind of thing. Yeah. Has there been any, like, I don't know whether you've been in a pub or someone's like maybe talked about it, not knowing who you were or something like that? Have you ever has there been any sort of moments like that that's hit home?
I mean, weirdly, I had it a couple of years ago when I was wearing a Muc Off hat in a co-op store. I bought some water or something lunchtime, and the guy said, oh, no way, Muc Off, you must be a motocrosser. And it was like, wow, he made that connection. And he's obviously a motocrosser, so he thought, Muc Off's a motocross brand because he used it on his motocross bike, and it was like, it was so cool that guy's jumped to that conclusion. And just like, I ride motorbikes and bicycles and stuff, and it's just like, oh, cool. And it's like, wow, that was really amazing. And that, you're absolutely right, that there's definitely, the last 2 years has been a big tipping point in terms of, and I think that's just the awareness that we've got globally now. It just seems to be a big shift. And I had it when I was on my e-bike at the weekend, on the ferry. I've now got my own Muc Off sprayed helmet, which I thought I've got to have my own one, even though I probably don't deserve it in my riding style. But and the guy, there's a guy next to me, and he was like, oh yeah, Muc Off, I use that. And how do you, he didn't know it was my company or anything, but he was just like, do you spray that on first, or put on the? I've got the black can. Do I put that on first? And I was like, oh no, I used it, and I didn't say it, but I just had a chat with him. But that's cool. That's happening more and more. It's really cool.
Sweet. So moving forward, where do you sort of see everything going? Do you think, do you see yourself continuing in the business for the foreseeable? I'm sure you've got plenty of product plans, like you've seen in the last few years, that you probably can't talk about too much. But is there any sort of insights of where you see things going in the foreseeable future?
I mean, 100% in terms of carrying on running the business. I mean, I love it, and it just feels like we haven't even started yet. So we're kind of, only a few rungs of the ladder into our journey. So we're loving being an independent business, and I love running it, and it's only getting more and more fun and more energized. So definitely for the foreseeable, I don't see any change with that, because I'm just there's just an endless amount to do. And innovation, there is, unfortunately I can't talk much about what we do because it's pretty sensitive stuff, but there is so much stuff. We're only just getting into our innovation flow, really, because we've now got our own tribologists and equipment. That's just driving a lot. So I think it's really just more of what Muc Off's about, bigger, better, and a lot more innovation, I think.
Cool. Well, we've had you here for over an hour and 20 minutes. Wow. I know you're a busy guy, so I won't take you too much longer. So thank you so much for for having us here and let us see the space and coming on as our first industry guest.
Pleasure.
After a string of athletes. So yeah, cheers.
No worries, I've loved it. I've been really dry. I didn't realize it an hour and 20 minutes.
That's amazing how
gone
quickly.
quickly.
Pass,
Yeah. No,
yeah.
thank you.
Thank you very much. Cheers, man.